All right, back here for hour number 2 on a Tuesday. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker, One Bills Live. Thanks for making us a part of your afternoon. Pleased to be joined now by ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky, who you probably heard on the Monday night broadcast last night. Tight turnaround for Dan. Dan Orlovsky's appearance on One Bills Live, presented by Caesars Sportsbook, an official mobile sports betting partner of the Buffalo Bills. Dan, thanks for giving us time, especially on a busy overnight for you. And so I will try to refresh your memory here with regards to Bills-Lions. And I know you even did a segment of your own on some of Joe Brady's scheming. But just the matchup advantage alone that he created, seeing how much Detroit stays in base defense, says, all right, you want to do it. I'm going to put my running backs and tight ends on your linebackers and safeties, and we're just going to eat all day. And at the end of the game, those players combined for 14 catches, 251 yards, and a touchdown. Hello.
Yeah. It was clinical by Joe Brady and maniacal. You know, the way that he just continued to find different ways and different people to kind of attack. And to your point, Chris, you know, Detroit wanted to play base. They wanted to play man coverage. And what I loved about it was it was obvious, but not lazy. You know, it was obvious who he wanted to go attack, but instead of just calling basic concepts or very simple routes and said, well, you got to go beat that guy, he was like, no, I'll create these advantages for you with some of their formations. You know, I've talked about this weekly, their 4x1 stuff. They ran it 12 times, you know, and so the confusion that created, the picks that maybe unintentionally it created, the motions that they used to try and create some of those advantages. I mean, it was awesome. And both in the pass and the run, in both of those places, it was obvious. And so it was another really good game when it comes to the design and the play calling, while also married with really high level execution by everybody on the offense.
So you've got Joe Brady scheming these guys and doing a really nice job with it. And I think one of the things that surprised a lot of people, and I guess not in hindsight, they tried to kind of tear down the performance of these two offenses because both these defenses were nicked up. The Bills without three of their starting DBs on the field. But that's the time of year we're in, right? I mean, look around the league, Dan, and if you're healthy, you're ahead of the game. And if you're not, good quarterbacks are going to take advantage of your defense.
Yeah, big time. And because of the, you know, kind of some of the schemes that are going on through the NFL, you know, everybody's running the 4x1 stuff that kind of Joe and the Green Bay Packers had been prevalent at the beginning of the season. I think the health is such a big deal because of the length of the season and how healthy your stars are, your best players, and how deep your football team is. I'll make two things point-wise about the game when it comes in relation to that, Steve. I've seen a lot of people talk about, well, Amari Cooper had no catches. If you go watch the game, he was attracting a lot of attention, though. And while the stat sheet may not say 8 for $140, he created so much space for everybody, both in the pass and the run game. And so it's almost like the Philly conversation of he is going to get his at some point. It is just going to be the numbers game. I actually think the defense played better than the end result says it did. If you just kind of have the game play out and you go back to 1 minute and 50 seconds left in the third quarter, it's 3rd and 16. And he throws Jared Goff that huge in-breaker that's right over 2 or 3 defenders to Amon-Ra, surprises them, and it goes for a touchdown. Great play. But if you told everybody in Buffalo, you're going to go into Detroit and you're going to give up 14 points with $1.50 left to go in the third quarter, everybody would take that against that offense. I know the fourth quarter got wild and whatnot, but I actually was really impressed with the way that defensive unit played. And I think it speaks to kind of the conversation this year about their defense. So many people have had to play, and so many people are now capable of playing that their depth is really, really good for this run.
Getting back to the offense, one more thing regarding Brady. I think to your point, you know, Cooper is the leading receiver for the Rams game, and so Detroit focuses all their attention on him. He doesn't get a target, and the Bills hang 48 on him. 9 different players caught passes, and that has been a theme all season long. You know, the mantra of Joe Brady, everybody eats. I didn't know if this democratic approach to distribution in the passing game was going to work to this degree. But, Dan, help me out. How does a defensive coordinator plan for an offense that says, yeah, okay, Cooper was our leading guy last week, we'll just go somewhere else? And to your point about the high level of execution, if that keeps going this way, I don't know how you stop this group.
Totally agree. And this goes back to a lot of the conversations that we have had all season and candidly since the Steph move. And that's not a knock on Stephon Diggs at all. He's a tremendous player. One, Chris, it only works because of the offensive line. It only works because that unit is a really strong unit. The simple way that I've kind of decided to talk about it is in the run game, you don't know who's getting the ball. And in the pass game, you don't know how you can match up. And that puts you at a really big time disadvantage defensively, just for the perspective of we want to play zone against the Buffalo Bills. Well, if you want to do that, that's really difficult because the offensive line can run the football at you, and they're not overly creative in their run game. They're just trying to be really efficient in their run game. And then the second thing is you have to be unbelievable in your plaster rules in zone defense when Josh gets outside the pocket. So it's not so easy as, well, we just won't play man. We'll play zone. Well, then you're going to get concerned about the run and then Josh's legs. All right, well, then we're going to play man. Well, you better be able to have a player at the line of scrimmage that's good enough with Amari Cooper. And then you got to have someone that's sudden enough to handle Shakir's quickness. You got to have two guys that can cover both those backs out of the backfield. You then have to have somebody that's big enough to handle a Coleman or Mac Hollins. And then you got to have two people to cover those tight ends. They don't exist. So those defenses don't get to play with 14 people. And so I do believe that is a really, really prevalent problem that they present to defenses.
One of the things that happened in this game, and I don't know whether it was by design or just the way the game fell, because the Bills got up, by 17 in the second half twice. They had 68 offensive plays, and they ended up with 34 runs and 34 passes, and they ran for 197 yards against Detroit, and they held Detroit to 48 yards rushing. We've been talking about that for the last couple of days, and it's always, I don't know that it's accurate to just say, well, there you go, it's proof that you got to run and stop the run. But when the score goes like it did, and the Bills are trying to shorten the game in the second half and give Detroit fewer and fewer possessions, and they can still run the ball when they want. And plus, Josh snaps off and a third and 11 and goes for 21 or something. You know what I mean? One of those runs. It really is. It's the full spectrum of what every offense wants to do. And this Bills team, you're really they're having a hard time derailing it because of the run game itself and their willingness to go to it at any point.
Steve, let me give you this stat that Hembo from ESPN gave me yesterday. So the Bills are the only team to average 8 yards a play in multiple games this season. They've done it in back-to-back weeks on the road versus the number 1 and number 4 seeds in the NFC playoffs. If you just wanted to encapsulate what the offense as a whole is doing right now, that's pretty darn impressive to be able to do that on the road in back-to-back weeks versus really good playoff caliber football teams. I think that right now there's the offense is, and Josh is by far the most confident I've seen him. By far, it's, to be honest with you, I get surprised when they don't have positive plays. I get surprised when Josh misses a throw or misses a read or they don't have explosive plays. And that's just kind of the world that they're in right now. And everybody always says we want to be playing our best football in December. No one's playing better than them right now.
Right.
All right, so let's spin it forward. It's not nearly ranking as high on the sexiness meter in terms of a matchup as the last 4 weeks have, but still in all, it's a division game. It's a conference game. We know conference record matters in AFC conference standing tiebreakers. And with Mahomes a little dinged and the Chiefs having 3 games in 12 days, I think Bills fans are hoping that Buffalo keeps their foot on the gas here with New England, Jets, New England to finish it out. Patriots looked like a wayward team last week against Arizona. A lot of the same problems have cropped up for them. What is your description of New England in a nutshell with what they're dealing with right now?
Offensively, all you have to do is really make sure. Now they can run the football decently, okay? So you've got to handle some of their big personnel runs, but that's not a consistent part because they have way too many whiffs, so you can create a lot of tackles for loss. Drake May is still a problem. They're not good on the outside, but he's still a dynamic player. His legs have been huge. He's very aggressive with the football and confident right now. So they have your attention offensively. I think that you can get after their offensive line. If you get their offensive line in one-on-one situations, one of their pass rushers for Buffalo will win on a consistent basis. They're not good enough across the board. Defensively, really the only person that I would say is playing well for them is Gonzalez. He's the only one. And so the more you get this defense to look at, and I think this is another massive motion game and communication game, the more you get this defense to look at, the more successful you're going to be. There is no question that if Buffalo just goes about their business, that they'll handle New England, because New England right now is reeling and they don't have enough talent this late in the season.
Well, what do you think it'll look like? Are the Bills going to go in there and kind of grind it out and shorten the game and run the ball on them and just do what they can to, I don't know, finger quotes, stay healthy, or do they come back there and just let Josh be the MVP and throw it?
I'd be ultra aggressive again. This defense, I don't think this defense can hang with this offense. And I think that the ideal situation is you make them unbelievably one-dimensional. You make it into this. Drake May's got to drop back 40 times and throw it because, again, the run game for New England hasn't been awesome, Steve, but it's been good. It's been solid, and you don't want them to think that they're capable of doing it within this game. So I don't believe that they can match up guy for guy. I would be very aggressive to try and jump on them and put them completely, kind of left hand tied behind their back.
Yeah, and I would agree, Dan. I would say May and Gonzalez are the two building blocks for that franchise going forward. They got to build around those guys for sure. Defensively, it was surprising to me. Gerard Mayo's their head coach, defensive guy, as we know, and just watching last week's game against Arizona, Kyler Murray just had all day to just sit back there and pick them apart. What is going on with New England's front seven, and why is there no real pass rush to speak of? Is it more they can't get teams off schedule, or they just don't have the horses?
Yeah, so I think, number one, they don't have the horses. They don't have really that true one-on-one guy. Barmore being back has helped a little bit, but he's not what he was pre-injury just yet. And so they don't really have a guy that you feel great about winning in pass rush situations. They don't have anybody that schematically we have to be constantly aware of, or that we're going to turn protection to, or our back's got to get to that way. So they don't really have the person. The second thing I'd say is this: they don't challenge offenses enough. There's way too much space that they give you, or air in the pass game. From my perspective offensively, if I want a completion, I'll get a completion against them. There's not enough of making it difficult for me. And so it feels their defense never consistently gets to play from a position of strength. They never get into the advantage opportunities. And so, I think that offensively, you don't necessarily go in and fear anything or anyone outside of Gonzalez. And, there's so many different places where you can attack them defensively through the air.
What has Gerard Mayo and his staff done well? Certainly the development of Drake May has been a little bit maybe surprising because nobody knew about the guy. And, tell me about Gerard Mayo and their staff and how they've handled this.
Yeah, I don't think that there's been a ton that you can point to this year and say, this is a building block. This is a foundational piece. There's been some highs and some lows, roller coasters. Again, I think Gonzalez, no question, is a cornerstone defensively. And then I would say, Jabril Peppers has been a really nice player for them this year. He's dealt with some injuries, but he's been a nice player. So the conscious, of where he is on the field. And then Drake May, it'll be interesting to see, kind of how New England attacks their offseason, how they go about it in free agency. They have to add weapons on the outside. They have to improve their offensive line. I think Alex Van Pelt, their offensive coordinator, has done some good stuff. Do they like the direction of him and Drake together? So, I don't know if there's a ton that you unequivocally feel great about outside of, Drake May and, oh my gosh, this young man's got a chance to be a really special player.
Dan, thanks as always for the time. We appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.